Hi everyone, it's Allison from Fathom 5 Tarot, and I'm here to do another episode in my series, What Have I Learned From? Insert deck here. I really love this series. It's so fun for me to do and look back through my decks and sort of fall in love with them all over again. And so I'm actually recording this on Sunday, February 21st. So I just did my week ahead reading not too long ago, like today. So I'm going to leave this for a couple of days so you don't get sick of me putting out too much content in one day. Not that I've ever put out too much content. But this is one that I really hemmed and hawed about whether or not I should talk about, because I actually don't know if anybody else on YouTube has this deck because it's very specific. But I think there's things to be learned from it, even if you don't have it. Again, like with any of these decks. And it is one that I don't actually read with, but one that I learned a lot from very early in my tarot journey. So I'm going to talk about that today. I will link, it is still available for purchase. And especially if you're in the States, it would be super cheap for an independently published deck. I think it's 35 Canadian dollars. There's a deluxe version with like just a nicer bag, I think, but 35 Canadian dollars. Now this is the Elora Tarot deck. So as you can see, the box is chewed because I got it way back when my oldest cat was a kitten. It's just a cardboard, like it's pretty flimsy. It's got a very, actually though, an unflimsy Velcro closing to it. And the reason that you probably haven't heard of this, unless like, do I have a neighbor close by who's gonna come on and see this video and talk to me about it? But Elora is a town in the general area of Ontario where I live, and it's very, very beautiful and a real, it's got some incredible natural features, a big gorge that a river runs through, super, super beautiful, and some historic buildings. So it's sort of a real southwestern Ontario tourist attraction. Like a lot of people go there in the summer. And the deck is very specific to this region in a couple of ways. One is that it's a collaborative art project, which is one of the reasons why I actually don't reach for this deck to read with at all. So there were a number of artists from the Elora area that contributed to different cards to this deck. And in the guidebook here, you can see that as a little white book goes, it's actually pretty substantial. Each card gets its own page, and you get the sort of key phrase of each card, sort of like keywords, I guess, and then a description of what the artist's intention was, and also some information about what medium they used and how they used it and why they used it. So it's pretty cool in that way. Now, I'm not a visual artist, and I don't really speak the language of art in terms of visual mediums. I'm just not, I'm not up with it. I just didn't take art. I wish I did when I was in school. So that doesn't mean as much to me. And of course, there's information about each individual artist. But in general, there's a couple of things that stop me from reading this deck. One is that I just don't generally jive with collaborative decks. I like more of a sense of unity, just my thing. Two is that you can tell there's a real difference between the artists who either are into the tarot or did some research into the tarot, or who just took the key sort of words and ran with it. There's some baffling cards in this deck that I don't get, and no matter how I wrap my mind around it, even after all these years of experience, I think I got this in 2013, maybe? I don't know. 2012? Whatever. Anyway, the thing is, I've had it for a long time, and there are cards where I'm still like, huh? What? Also, tragically, this is no fault of anyone's, of course, but one of the artists who was going to do at least one of the cards, my favorite card, the Strength card, passed away before the project could be completed. And in an homage to her, a beautiful homage, they took an already existing piece of her artwork to put it in the deck. It's fabulous. I don't think they should have made any other decision. It doesn't work for me as a Strength card. But I'm so glad they didn't just sort of trample over and throw something together at the last minute and forget her involvement, because she had been involved in the project from the beginning. So for those reasons, I just don't read with it. But I like it. I like these cards I'm going to show you today. I like a lot, and they have helped me look at the tarot from a different perspective, which is the whole purpose of this series. This is your first time here in the series, so I'm trying to diminish my habits of just like doing walkthroughs and flip throughs of decks, and instead talk about key cards from each suit and from the majors that I think really speak to me from a particular deck. I think you can just take the learning. You can go online and buy the deck. You can do whatever you want, but it's not always just about like acquiring decks. So that's where I'm at right now. So I've pulled the cards that I'm going to talk about. So we'll start with the majors. And I'm also going to talk about some of the specifics of this deck, so you're very clear. Like I said, it is the Elora Tarot, and the artists are from the Elora region in Elora, Ontario. And there are some real landmarks that make it in. So if you do happen to be local, and if you know what I'm talking about by going to Elora and maybe tubing down the river through the gorge or whatever, maybe this deck is going to be like your jam, which is awesome. And again, I bought it and I have kept it because I love to support local artists. And this is a great example of that. So this is the Empress and the Emperor. And you'll see that both cards feature a particular spot in Elora. It's this outcropping of rock. We hear the Emperor sitting on it, and it's called the Tooth of Time. This should have just been there for millennia, and it's super beautiful. It's in the background of the Empress card. You can see it there. So I love these hints. And then we also have the Elora Mill in the background of the Emperor, which is another, again, famous historic building there. So I love that many of the cards in the deck are grounded geographically in where they are. And these are things that I can go and see. Like I could take my deck and go to Elora and see this. And of course, for most people watching the video, this won't be an experience that you have. But it is worth looking around and see if anyone's doing a tarot project in your area, or something that is, again, in my case, Canadian, or like specific, like the Brady Tarot has super cool American animals in it and things like that. I think those things can really ground you in where you live, which is so important. I think a lot of times we look at elsewhere as being super cool and exotic, like Canada's a super young country, right? We don't have cathedrals and churches, and we're just little babies in the world. But what we do have are gorgeous natural things like this that are our heritage, and so it's awesome. I love it. Okay, I'm going to try and show this card delicately because I don't think I'm allowed to show any nudity on YouTube. And I know in tarot cards, okay, this is the Lover's card with my fingers coming over. So there's boobs under there. And I think it's okay to show nudity in tarot cards, but I'm not 100%, and I'm not even monetized, so it wouldn't be getting demonetized, but I don't want to like get anything taken down. But also, this is a photograph of two real people, and I'm not comfortable with putting it out in this fashion on a YouTube video if they're not, so I'm covering them up. But could there be a more like beautiful, sexy, but like tender, loving Lover's card? Two women, so much greater representation. It's hard to show up on screen. I'm going to put it down now because it makes my hand cramp up. But like if you look at where their bodies join, it's like there's almost a heart-shaped shadow between them that's so beautiful. It's so serene. It's such a fantastic depiction of that card. I love it. It's beautiful. And another thing I don't usually like about decks is photorealism, like or just photographs in general. Some of my least favorite cards in this deck just happen to be photographs. I like something a little bit more created for tarot, like something a little more abstract, even if it's just like pen to paper. But oh, that Lover's card is just so beautiful and tender and loving. I love it. I love the Lovers. I also love this Chariot card. Oh man, so great. Such a genius thing. This is also a photograph, but clearly there's also been some manipulation here. You can see the 7 as shooting stars at the top of the card. But I love this idea of being behind the horses, like driving the chariot, right? This is your view on the chariot and where are you going to go? And the animals are still looking in 2 different directions, which is actually pretty hard if you've yoked up horses before, which I have. But you know, you have to make choices, and we've got the Milky Way, right? Like this sort of avenue of possibility in there. I just really think the perspective is great. And I'm kind of surprised we don't see it more in decks, that you are driving the Chariot, and putting you in the literal driver's seat of that card. Love that. Hanged Man. I love this card so much. And I think partly, and I don't know if this is intentional, it reminds me of musical notes. Like, it looks like a upside down treble clef for those musicians out there. So there's that. I think that's super cool. But also there's real movement in this Hanged Man card. Like, it doesn't feel stationary, because being hanged is part of the process of moving through the major arcana, right? Like, it's sometimes it's just going to happen. It doesn't mean everything is stopped, even though you might be in a hangman position. I love that dichotomy, that it looks like this, if this is a figure of a person, you know, your brain is making these connections, which is so cool. But it looks like it's swinging kind of. I just love that idea of melding stillness and motion in a Hanged Man card. And again, I don't feel like I see that very much. So nice work, Elora Tarot. Oh, I should have said the artist names are on the side of each card too. So while these borders are huge and annoying, and I thought I would cut them at one point, I didn't feel right cutting off the artist names. And some of them are so abstract, I wouldn't know what they were. I don't think I've got any in this particular one, but some of them are weird. Oh, and this is the back. It's fine, I guess. It's reversible. I don't love it, but whatever. Here's the moon card. And I love that we have two animals. I don't know if you can really see. We've got an animal drinking out of the water here, drinking out of the moon's reflection. And then we've got another one dancing by the moon. So this idea of energy and stillness and darkness and mystery, and some trees lit up and some trees totally dark. Rocks in the river. This may be a specific point in the river there. I'm not sure. It doesn't feature the Tooth of Time specifically, but the artist may have used a specific place in the river. I just love the idea of drinking out of the reflection of the moon quietly, or sort of abandoning yourself to the moon and dancing. I think it's just such a great card. So cool. Okay, and then I think my last... I had the star card, but there's not much to say. It's a beautiful star card. Well, I'll show you. This one's based on a real person, so I'm going to cover up her boob too. It's so pretty. But in the guidebook, the artist literally put, "This is a drawing of my wife. She's super hot," and that's it. So he wasn't clearly into the tarot thing, but I do think it's really beautiful. And then this deck. Whoops. This deck comes with a happy squirrel. And it's one of the most literal drawings in the whole deck, which cracks me up. So if you're a Simpsons fan or you like your deck with a happy squirrel, this one's got one. So those are the majors I'm going to talk about, and then oh yeah, I want to leave the swords to the end. I always want to leave the swords to the end. And then I'm going to do okay, I'm going to do the cups. So Three of Cups. I really like the depiction that these, you know, this card of friendship and celebration and companion, but they're literally filling the cup of another person, which is one of the most critical things in a friendship, right? That you do your best to fill the cup of that other person, and then trust that they will do the same for you when you need it. Your emotional cup, your common sense cup. Sometimes friends can tell you things that maybe you don't want to hear, that kind of thing. So, and then there's a real so triple moon energy here, and vines and a dance and warmth. I think it's really great. Now, let me make sure I put this in the right pile. The Eight of Cups. I didn't like this at first. I'm not really a mermaid person. I don't really get into mythical creatures in my decks. I don't like dragons. I don't like fairies. I'm not into it. It's just me. And I was like, huh? But it's because I hadn't looked at it closely enough, I don't think. So we've got a moon, and then we've got these, I think, water lilies or lotus flowers. I don't know. My flower identification is also not great, you guys. But when you look, there's a real cycle here, right? So of course we've got moon cycles. So we've got this giant, beautiful moon here. But we also have the cycle of the flowering, becoming a cup, but then pouring out, right? And this really speaks to like, to everything there is a season and things end. And sometimes that's just a natural process, right? That the cup will spill out into this giant ocean of water before the cup will begin again. And when we take a look at the Eight of Cups and walking away from a situation, right? That it feels bad at the time, but that may be just an organic part of a cycle that has to happen in order for the energy to be returned to the water and then begin the cycle again. So while I still am not really jiving with the mermaid per se, I get this card. And I do really think that about the Eight of Cups, right? Like, you gotta move on from stuff. I was having a conversation earlier about how nostalgia is a dangerous drug. Looking back is sometimes not the right thing. Sometimes you just gotta look forward. So yeah, I kind of like it now. I wasn't into it at first. Mermaids. Okay, this Four of Cups card blows my mind. And it's so good. It's so good. And this is someone who knows their tarot. This artist, I'm looking at it so I can see, Martine Blundell, or she did her research. And it's one of my favorite cards in the deck, and her explanation is so good that I'm actually going to read you her explanation from the book, because I couldn't say it better than her. And this isn't my interpretation. I was like, at first I was like, well, it's pretty, but what you talking about, Martine? Or it's Maggie. Huh. Oh, because I'm on Four of Wands in the... Sorry. On the wrong page. Where's my cups at? There we go. Idiot. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Yes, Martine. So I'm going to hold it up and I'm going to read it to you. The Four of Cups is what I call the grass is always greener card. The stem of the plant is a representation of the self. The small cups are what you have. The larger cup represents what you wish you had. If you take a closer look at the large cup, you will see that the line work is a combination of the three smaller cups. This is to show you you already have what you desire. You just need to look at it from a different perspective. The sun is meant to represent the soul, and all of the brightness and vibrancy comes from within. The rainbow and the grass are actually the same on both sides. Come on. Slaps. So good. So good. Okay. And then we have, I wanted to put some quartz in here. So this is a great Knight of Cups. I love this Knight of Cups. Now, again, we have the Tooth of Time. You can see the rock formation there. But we also have a lot of different elements here, right? So if the Knight of Cups is our romantic emotion, we have a sunrise or a sunset with the colors, but we still also have the moon. We've got dry land, we've got flowing water, we've got light, we've got just shadow of the rider here. So I think it's just a really good, not caution, well, yeah, maybe caution about, like, sure, run with your emotions, but keep your feet on the solid ground and don't just go with the sunlight and the beautiful sunrise, right? Do remember the moon and the shadow so that you're not just like giving away your emotions with abandon, without being practical about them too. So I think that's a great Knight of Cups for me. Okay. Let's do Pentacles. This is a fabulous Two of Pentacles card. It's very Rider-Waite-Smith faithful, right? The idea of the juggler, but there's been so much added, right, about this idea of balance. So of course we've got the juggling idea of balance, but we've also got a tightrope idea of balance. If you look at the stage, then it's going up at one side. It looks more like a suspension bridge than a stage. You know those wobbly bridges that you walk on that require more balance? The curtain has a sun on it, and it's being drawn away from or in front of, depending on how you look at it, a curtain with stars on it. And there is the different moon phases, right? This idea of balancing everything is just beautifully connected, but it's also kept that idea of the Two of Pentacles being a staged card, right? Where it looks like it might be performative. So all of these things I really dig about that Two of Pentacles. Okay, okay, I think we're still going. Okay, sorry, my computer did something weird. Four of Pentacles. This I really like. So we've got like a sort of a heavenly figure on top of one of these Four Pentacles, but then we've got this sort of darker figure at the bottom. And I think, again, this duality of the Four of Pentacles, like, sure, you've got all your stuff, but what's it for? What's it good for? Is there someone else's life you can be making better? Are you hoarding just for the sake of hoarding? Because that is not a very positive way to live your life, right? What is it about the things that you have? And can you be pushing outward more to someone who needs it? Or are you going to be tempted to continue to hoard? There's just a lot of really interesting interpretation. The light and the dark figure are the same size. It's not a card. It's a card where you can apply judgment as to what it is for the situation. And I think it's very cool. Also, this sort of depiction of them is like fruits and the tree growing, fruits of labor, perhaps. But again, if you're just going to like labor and work and acquire all of these things, what are things really? What are they to you in your life? And what should you be doing with them? I just think it's a really cool card. Finally, you know my love of a Knight of Pentacles. Of the knights, this is the knight that goes more slowly. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, he's on a draft horse, a heavier horse. He's at a standstill when everyone else is moving forward. And just this real idea of time. And I just love his hands. Like these are hands that have done some honest, hard work. And they're taking a moment to stop and examine what has happened as a result of that work. I just think it's a beaut, this card. Oh, I love my Knight of Pentacles. Okay. Wands. This is the Four of Wands. So here the wands are like crossing the path on the way to home. But what I really like about it is that it's so humble and so much like not about a big celebration or, well, it is maybe about a big celebration, but it's not extravagant. It's not coming out of a castle. It's like, if you're going to celebrate, what do you value? What's this little piece of home that's the most important thing to you? Because that's the Four of Wands energy that you should be focusing on, and not bigger celebrations or like, what's the root of what it is that you want? And oh, I love it so much. I think that's such a beautiful card. Now, the Eight of Wands is, again, a very local phenomenon. So what's pictured at the bottom here, you'd only recognize it if you'd been to Elora. But it's the result of this real wood-fired oven in a park. And it's this group called Kitchen in the Park, there was this old defunct kiln in Elora that wasn't doing anything, and they had something like 2,500 fire bricks that you would build a kiln out of, and they're like, what do we do with this? And they're like, well, what if we built a giant community bread oven in the park, and then we could bake bread or, wood-fired pizzas for charity things, and then have school groups out and teach them how to cook like wood-fired bread and to do these kinds of things. And I love it because in there, this is also a Wiccan collective that worked on this piece of artwork. So they have some, mojo behind them. But they've got the spiral in the center of the wands, and all the wands are shooting off in a different direction. So I think there's a super cool balance of, let's take this inspiration and energy and run with it, but let's make sure that we end up with something positive and something cohesive for our community, which is really exemplified in this bread oven that, again, I've actually eaten pizza out of the bread oven. I was at a music festival where you could buy like pizzas, and the money went to charity, and it was so great. But something that makes sure your energy is focused in a way that's positive and not just pinging off of everywhere. It makes me so happy to see that card. This card also makes me insanely happy. Like this Ten of Wands. She's literally herding cats. Like, do I need to say anything else about that? Because sometimes your burden isn't heavy, your Ten of Wands burden. Like, it's not a big dour thing, but sometimes just a pain in the ass. And you know it's going to be for the good result, but it's just a necessary thing. It's got to get your way through. And nobody likes to do that stuff, but sometimes you just gotta. I love that energy for the Ten of Wands. I've never seen anything like it, and it makes me laugh every time I see it. Okay, finally, swords. Almost there. Going to keep it under half an hour. So the Five of Swords. This is this particular artist, Creso. He also clearly has some tarot knowledge. But what I really like about this Five of Swords is we've got this battle, but what's the point? What's the point of what we're doing? Like, do we even remember what we're fighting about anymore? Because it's this very sort of Picasso-esque cubist, like arms and limbs and swords everywhere. Like, what are we doing? And it's a really cool energy for the Five of Swords. And I just think his artwork's beautiful too. I'm going to leave I'm not going to go in the order because I'm going to leave my very, very favorite card till the end. The Nine of Swords. This is a good example actually of a photographic card that is symbolic enough that I like it more, right? The woman is a photograph, but they superimpose the different elements. And I love this idea of it's a beautiful place to sleep, but the Nine of the Swords the nightmarish swords are under the water. It's unclear, like, are they poking out of the water? Are they not? The perspective is forced. It's, again, how much do those nightmares actually affect your life? How much are they inventions of your own mind? I think this card encapsulates it beautifully. While you have this opportunity to sleep in this beautiful protection of this old tree. It's so pretty. The Page of Swords. I almost didn't put this one in because bullfighting is crap and I hate it. We could get into a whole thing about it if you want, but I hate it. I feel like this is a great example of maybe don't go in half-cocked. Don't go in guns a-blazing if you don't have the mojo to back it up, because it looks to me like this bull's gonna take him out. You've got some swords energy, right? You've got some stuff going on. You've got some intellect, but make sure you know what you're talking about before you spout off and be all cocky about it. That's how I take it anyway. And finally, this is, I mean, we all know how I love an Eight of Swords. I feel like I bring it up in every one of the series. But this one, Cocktail Swords. Like, it just slays me. Interestingly, we've got kind of a moon card in the back there. So there's some moon energy in this card for sure. We've got the Cocktail Swords with a full drink, implying that there have been 7 drinks drunk. And yet it continues, right? This cycle of feeling trapped in that thing, in that addiction. But also there's a key around the neck. Like, you know what it is to get yourself out of these swords. You're just not doing it. And you have the ability. That's the big thing about the Eight of Swords, right? Is that there's always, in good Eight of Swords cards, I've seen a couple I haven't really liked, but there's a path out. There has to be for that card to have its initial meaning. And there is a path here. And she just looks so sad. And we know there's a path out. And she does, but she's maybe not willing to accept it yet. I think it's just such a phenomenal interpretation of that card. It took my breath away when I first saw it. So that's the Elora Tarot. And again, while I said I never read with it, I can't say I didn't learn from it, and I can't say I don't value it, and it's still here in my collection. And I do hope that either someone from Ontario wants to grab this deck just to support local artists, especially in this time of COVID. Or maybe you love everything that I just don't like about decks, right? Collaborative decks and a variety of art styles. And there are a few cards in this deck that I do think are just kind of clunkers, but that's true of many decks, actually. So if this moves you at all, I really encourage you to click the link, show an Ontario group of artists some love, and I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again.